Can you imagine that? Like knowing that you have a gift, knowing that you have a skill set that you perfected and you worked on and you were passionate about, and then at some point in time, the world doesn't need you. Here we are again, Shadelife Café. Omo, come on, bro. Ugh. Check 1, 2, 2. Never really know. All right, we're clocking in. I'm trying to make this a consistent thing. This thing that I've just enjoyed doing, which is just sitting, drinking my coffee, and talking to you guys. A true vlog, an update about where I'm at with life, things that I'm learning, experiencing, and all the while simultaneously dealing with. This week was really interesting. Essentially, what I've come to realize is that baby Bali is coming a lot sooner than I thought. I made this video about me kind of freaking out, and what's funny about that video is that literally before I decided to record it, I was genuinely freaking out. I just, in my mind, like I know that she's due in, soon, but it doesn't really translate that way. In my mind, I'm thinking I still got like a couple months, right? Which is not the case, like at all. So I'm coming to this interesting place where as I get closer, now we're at 32 weeks, and I think, right, 32, 33, I'm coming to this interesting space where I realize that I'm changing. I've changed more than anything. And with me changing, so does life. And what I had before within, raising Bodhi and that stage of my life, it's just different. And as much as I want to say, man, I wish that I can do things how I used to do it, but even when Bodhi came into our life was very different. I had a 9-to-5 job. I had a job that, if I'm honest, as much as it hurt and it stung to get laid off, I was genuinely unhappy working there at the same time. So as much as it's like, oh man, I can't believe they did that, I also am very thankful that it happened because it changed my life in so many ways about just how I saw myself, my craft, art, life. And then when I got laid off and I was raising a kid and learning how to be a husband all at the same time, that was change. Like genuinely, I was experiencing change in my life. I didn't know what to expect the next day. I didn't know what the future looked like. And for the first time in my life, I was living in a moment because I wasn't planning for what we could do in 10 years or what can we do, because I just didn't know. I didn't know what my clientele looked like. I was working literally months a month. And then things got better and they improved, and I was able to take my family on this crazy adventure of going places and experiencing things and being together as much as possible. And it was great, and I adore those days. And then pandemic happened. And when pandemic happened, again, everything changed. Hold on, I'm gonna adjust this light because this is bothering me. I don't know if that's a thing, but it is. I think that's better. Yeah, that's good. And then you, sir, if you could just move over just a bit. Sorry to interrupt the space. Just when things don't feel right, they just don't feel right, So I essentially, I felt all these things during that time in my life where things were just changing. I was experiencing things for the first time too. Like this life that I was living in raising my son, I've never lived this life. Like truthfully, I've never lived where I got to wake up on my own time and my own schedule and grind and work towards something that I wanted in my own life. I've never done that. I've grinded and worked towards things, but not on my own time and schedule. And I find myself in a very interesting place now as Bali approaches, my life has once again changed. My perspective has changed. Also, this world has changed. I built a career of photography. I've never gone to school for it. I just learned it. I was a YouTube university kid. I learned it with my friend Twin, and we just figured it out. I mean, I understood photography because I come from video and working with DSLR cameras, but I never really learned it in that capacity. I had to figure out my own creative eye, my own approach. What do I like? What do I don't like? And I did everything, event photography to wedding photography. I did portraits, I did product, I did landscape, I did travel, lifestyle, content creation, you name it. And then come 2023, nobody really cares about photography in the way that they once did. And the world changed, where I essentially built a career in 3 years that is almost obsolete. And it feels like the way graphic designers talk about their career in the 80s or the late 70s, where everybody needed graphic designers because they were, they had the hand, the gift to be able to draw things. And then all of a sudden, computers came and everybody could do it themselves and nobody needed them. Can you imagine that? Like knowing that you have a gift, knowing that you have a skill set that you perfected and you worked on and you were passionate about. And then at some point in time, the world doesn't need you. Or at least they don't need you in the way that they once did. And you're faced with this reality as a creative individual that this world is going to keep changing. And as it keeps changing, you as a creative individual also have to adapt and change. And we're not faced with the same options because it's not like we live in decades anymore. It's not like music is, the 90s, the early 2000s. No, music and genres and trends change like every 3 years. We're talking about a whole new sound that happens in 2 to 3 years. And I know might be extreme, but when you're a creative individual in a creative field, you know how much things have changed in a short period of time. Look at Blockbuster. From VHS, I mean, you're talking about childhood in the 90s, okay? All the way to early 2000s. That's a decade and change, right? Which is a long time. VHS to DVD to deliverable DVDs, meaning you don't have to be there, you can just order it, to getting taken out by a red box, to not needed because of streaming services. Now, I love streaming services, although simultaneously that changes everything. I mean, I grew up downloading videos on LimeWire, Kazaa, Napster, where streaming was called file sharing. And you're faced with just like this reality that life is changing. And what my daughter coming into our lives very fast, what it really represents is, to me, it's an end of an era and the beginning of new. And if there's one thing that I realized with change that you have to be able to do, is just know that it's going to be different. You can't control change. You can't control what happens. You can't control even how you're going to react with those changes. You just have to know change is different. When I moved to South Florida from New York, I had to continuously remind myself that this is just different. I'm not in New York anymore. We're not in Kansas anymore, right? I'm not home. I had to continuously remind myself that I just was in a different place. And I had to embrace this place for what it is. And, thankfully, as a young dancer, I got the experience to be able to travel. And when you're traveling, you have to go places with an open mind, an open heart, and an open hand, and realize it's just not your home. So when you go to somebody's house and their rules are take your shoes off and you don't understand why, it doesn't logically make sense, but it's their rules, you do it respectfully because it's part of their culture. And it may not be how you grew up, but it's different, and you embrace it. And I'm really thankful for those experiences to be able to travel. I'm really thankful to have the opportunity to experience the world. I think that when you're faced with it, when it comes to the idea of time, it's really scary, if I'm honest. I'm really excited to be a father of two. And all the time, all at the same time, I'm extremely scared out of my mind. Not because I don't think I can do it, just because I don't know what it means. I don't know what that feels like. I know other people have a lot of kids and they have two kids, and I'm not the only one. I'm just speaking genuinely from my heart about how I'm experiencing this transition in my life, and I just genuinely don't know. I don't know what to expect, and more or less, I don't know what to expect in someone that's in a field of creativity where creativity is changing all the time. Where in one season, people need you, and then in the next, why? Cameras are changing fast, like really fast. The last couple of vlogs I've actually done have been on my phone, and you don't even realize it because technology is that good, and that's scary and also exciting all at the same time. And the truth is, it's just gonna keep getting worse, meaning it's gonna keep getting better. And if you can't adapt to it, you're just gonna be left in a time zone that isn't needed. Now, that's not to say that earlier time frames don't have relevance or importance. It's just the reality that we all have to face. These last couple of weeks, I'll be honest, I've been looking for his wifey. Babe, I'm just finishing recording, okay?
You what?
I'm just finishing recording, okay?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You didn't know. It's okay. You're fine, my love. Past couple weeks, I've actually been looking for other types of work, which is interesting because, I run my own business and company and it's been doing its thing. But I also realized that within the time that I had raising my son in the first couple of months, I had a certain stability that was there, meaning consistent income. And one thing that people don't talk about when you run your own business is that it's great, you get to wake up and be in your own time and schedule, but what a lot of people don't talk about is that can you keep it going with your clients all the while life changing? Because your clients in one sense have certain needs, but then times change and then they don't. So I've been looking for different types of work simply because there's a truth and reality that exists within my field as well, that as it's changing, I'm also unaware of what those changes are. And the last thing that I would want is for a change so drastic to happen that I'm really left with nothing. And that's a really humbling experience, if I'm honest, is to go from a couple of years of just kind of being in your own world of creativity and working on projects that you enjoy to potentially submitting to somebody else's work. And there's nothing wrong with it either, but it is a humbling experience. And through the process, I've also gone to interviews and talking to people, and at the same time researching, you realize how much this field has changed. And one of the things that I don't think is actually talked about enough we are raised, I guess you could say, in certain crafts to think professionally within your skill set, within being proficient in your job. But I don't think that people talk enough about even within having a position in creativity. Whether you're a photographer, you're a model, you're a videographer, whether you're working for yourself or working for another company, there's a reality that the industry changes often and your skill set may be obsolete. Again, I'll go back to photography. Everyone needed it. Special events, personal events, weddings, mitzvahs, to branding, personal branding, lifestyle influencer, to, well, we all have phones and we can do it ourselves. And people holding cameras that literally built a career off of being a photographer are faced with the reality that they may not be needed. Now, I think you're always going to need creative imagery. You're always going to need the craft of photography, because photography is the basis of a lot of other arts. I mean, motion pictures is pictures in motion. So it doesn't take away the skill set, but it does take away that, it doesn't take away anything except that it does say that that specific career is going to be different, and how it's booked, how people work in and through it, and the skill sets that you learn. I mean, I'm faced with this position as a photographer as well. Well, what photography is going to be in your niche, and will that niche be needed at a later date? And then that puts you into, well, be an artist. And as an artist, how do you express yourself? But what if the way that you express yourself at some point is no longer trend? And then you're faced with, well, how do I continue allowing my work to be seen and heard when an algorithm actually doesn't push it out? That's interesting. You got to be good. You got to be the best. Your work has to pop. It has to say something. But you're now in competition with not people. You're in competition with an app. I know there's a lot of directions to talk about this. Essentially, it's me venting on what it means to be a creative individual. Because for me, photography would be the basis, right? Even in video, you still have to think of imagery. As an actor, you're creating pictures, So from one side, you're talking to this person, that's one picture, to the reaction of something happening over here. It's another reaction, but it's a picture. And that's how we take in the story, is creating pictures as actors. All the while, yes, dialogue and sound and music, the beauty of filmmaking. But for me, photography is the basis. Creating different pictures in this frame. I'll tell you this. If there's one thing that I realize in the grand scheme of my daughter coming into our life, is that I can't expect it to be anything other than what it is, which is different. And although that scares me a lot, I also realize that I have to approach life with an open mind, an open heart, and open hand. That I am more afraid of something that I don't know than I am afraid of what is going to happen. I'm more nervous about the concept that I can't control what happens next, because it's unknown territory. You don't know. So when you're faced with the fear of the unknown, and you're faced with change, essentially, you find yourself in this place of like, I just need to keep on holding on to something that I don't know what I'm holding. I mean, the only word that comes to mind is faith. Not knowing and still going. Not understanding and trusting that you don't understand. Believing in something that maybe you don't necessarily comprehend. I think as a parent, what you are faced with in any stage of life, from birth, infancy, to year 1, year 2, year 3, another kid, is there's this weird stage where you kind of are excited about the next stage, and all the while grieving your past life of how things once were. And if you could just be honest with that, of that you are grieving. You're grieving with whatever just happened is no longer going to be there. There'll be bits and pieces of it, but it just won't be the same. And I think it's important that you are honest about it, at least with yourself. And starting there, at least you can Now open yourself up to different, to change. And change, the only way that you can accept it is just knowing change is change and it's different. And if you can be open to the possibilities of different, then you're on a different mindset than most people. As a artist, I think that you always have to be in that mind state. That whatever I thought was relevant and important just may not be a part of the conversation. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't express yourself, but just knowing that as you express yourself, you also have to be in tune with where the world is currently at, current events. And I'm a person that I live in late 90s, early 2000s. To me, music is still about Usher 8701, and good R&B music where people wore baggy pants and Timberlands. And realistically, hip-hop R&B is not that. I'm not even current on music. I'm not even current in times. I'm only current in my own reality of my own life. But if I can get on the wavelength to understand that I can't hold on to those things that I hold dearly to because it's just not where the world is. I guess essentially it's like dancing when I think about it. Dancing can't have, like, honest and true expression of dance can't have any expectation of movement. You just have to listen and be and trust your training, realistically. If you train, the moves will be there. And if you're in the moment and you're listening, you might hit a beat that you didn't even know was there, and you create magic. But if you're sitting there and you're anticipating, you're trying to control the music in the moment, you will fail every time. And also, you might get lucky, but you won't live in the experience because you're too busy thinking about how to control the moment. I think the same exists within our life, and as a creative artist, you can't control these things. You just have to be open and present to a new moment, and that is scary as shit. All the while knowing that's called living. And if you can live and be alive, we'll be okay. My foot went numb sitting in this position. Huh? Yeah, I'm done, but my foot's like seriously numb.
Not the best for sitting for a long period of time.
Yeah, I don't know how monks do that. How do they sit like that and not get bothered by... I love meditating, but jeez, that is rough. Maybe that's the point. I don't know. Okay. That's good stuff. I don't even know if anything I just said makes sense.